listen, even as a kid, we just never had money. My dad was a pastor. My mom worked for the post office. We always had enough to get by. My parents were really good with the little money that they had. It's not like we were ever behind on rent or I guess our mortgage because I think we owned. We paid all of our credit card bills on time. We never were worried about having food on the table, but we never had enough for extras. We never had enough for me to get the latest fashions. I was always waiting for people at my church to give me their hand-me-downs. We always had just enough to get by. And I think that's why I was always on the lookout for a good side hustle. Even as a kid, I think I got my first job when I was 13 at my aunt's flower shop. I answered phones and for some reason sometimes made flower arrangements that were like really bad because why as a 13-year-old was I doing that? And so in today's episode, we're going to talk about kind of the grown-up version of that. Last week, we talked about my very first ever side hustle when I started teaching, which was giving private lessons, private piano and voice lessons. And today, we're going to be talking about kind of the first side hustle that I think launched all of my successful side hustles. Not that private lessons wasn't successful. I think it was in its own right. And I think I could have, if I wanted to, have scaled it into something bigger. I just kind of realized along the way that it wasn't super for me. I didn't love it. But when it comes to reselling and everything that came after reselling, I realized I had something pretty powerful on my hands. So let's talk about my side hustle as a reseller. This is Rich Teachers with Becky Park. So first, let me talk about this. I have been gone for 2 weeks. I never intended to take a 2-week break, especially this early on in my podcast, but life happened the way that it does. I went on spring break with my family, thought I'd be able to film a video and a podcast episode before that, did not. And when I got back, I had a talent show that my choir was hosting. So I was putting that together and that was kind of a big deal. We had a dress rehearsal and the talent show itself and all the work that goes into it. And then I got vertigo, like the worst case of vertigo. And my hip hurts a lot. I feel like an elderly woman came into my room in the night and swapped hips with me. Like, I don't understand why I'm not even 40 yet and my hip is messed up the way that it is. So that's kind of what's going on in my life. And that's why I have been a little absent from the podcast, but I'm here today to talk to you about reselling. And I'm very excited to do so. Now, I have talked about reselling in previous episodes. I haven't gone super in depth and talked about what exactly it is that I do with reselling, but I have talked a little bit about how I got started with it, how much money I make from it. And so I thought I would just kind of share with you from the perspective of if you were looking for side hustles, why reselling might be a viable side hustle for you as a teacher. So let me just start off by kind of sharing my origin story, if you will, when it comes to reselling. In the year 2017, and even prior to that, I would bring clothes every once in a while to Plato's Closet to sell stuff that my husband wasn't wearing anymore, stuff that I wasn't wearing anymore. This is like pre-kids and also when my kid was really young, my first kid. I would just take stuff to them and hope for the best, hope that they would take a lot of items, hope that they would give me a lot of money for those items. But if you know anything about selling to places like Plato's Closet or to Clothes Mentor or any of those consignment store type places, you quickly learn that they're not giving you a lot of money for those items. I actually made a video for my reselling YouTube channel titled something along the lines of why you shouldn't sell your clothes to Plato's Closet, just kind of breaking down how little it is that they give you and how you can make so much more money by selling it yourself online. And that video is actually doing pretty well for me. But I would just take clothes to them sometimes. And I remember in probably October of 2017, I took a bunch of clothes to Plato's Closet, and a lot of it was still new with tags. It was a lot of brands like Banana Republic, J. Crew Factory, Gap, like stuff that you would wear as a young teacher, more career-oriented clothing. And I remember taking it into Plato's and like a 16-year-old kid looking through it and being like, well, we can take these two things and give you like $3.81. And I was like, what? Like, I think I had brought them an entire bin full of clothing. And they were like, yeah, everything's just kind of too mature for us. Like, this isn't really, what fits the clientele of people who shop here. I think I was too insulted to accept the $3.81 payout. I took those 2 items back and I came home and vowed to figure out a way to sell that stuff for more money on my own. If I couldn't sell it to Plato's, I was going to find a way to sell what I thought was really high quality clothing to someone else for more money. I did a quick Google search, and that's when I heard about Poshmark. That's when Poshmark came across my radar. And actually, even months prior, my brother, who I think was living with me at the time, my younger brother, yeah, he's lived with me a couple of times. He like moved in, moved out, moved in. Anyway, I think he was living with me at the time. And he, I remember, had showed me on his phone this app called Poshmark. And especially at that time, it was exactly what it is now. It was an app and a website that you could sell your used clothing on, and people would buy it from you for, a super discounted price based off of how much it retailed for. But I feel like back then, especially, there was a lot more maybe like high-end luxury brands. So he would always show me like the Gucci stuff and Prada stuff that he wanted. And he was like, this is $800 retail, but I can get it here for $200. Do you think I should do it? And to me, spending $200 on clothing in general is just crazy sauce. So I was like, I don't think so. Like, I think you can use your money for much better things. But that's when I first heard the name Poshmark. And so when I did a Google search about how can I sell my clothes to someone to make more money, or can I sell my clothes online, something along those lines, I saw information about Poshmark come up. I saw some blog posts, but really what I came across were YouTube videos. And at the time, I didn't really think of YouTube as a place to go to learn. I just thought of YouTube more as a place to watch funny videos of like people's dogs or from people's vacations, or to watch clips from American Idol. Like, I didn't really think of it as a place to go to learn how to do something. And so I remember like being really weirdly hesitant to sit down and watch YouTube videos, but I did it because I was like, okay, I've read all the blog posts that I can, but I'm going to try to watch some videos and learn from people more about Poshmark so that maybe I can make some sales over there. Because I remember I figured out how to list on Poshmark. I remember like photographing all of my items and just kind of twiddling my fingers and waiting for sales to come in. And in the meantime, I was like, well, let me learn as much as I can and see if there's more that I can do on my end to get more sales to come in faster. And that's when I realized on YouTube that there were people whose only job was selling used clothing on Poshmark. And then also, obviously, any money that they were making from YouTube. Although at the time, I didn't really understand how YouTube worked. I didn't really understand how people could be making money off of it. So really, I was like, these people are making a full-time income selling on Poshmark. And I started getting a little bit more into it when I made my first sale. Oh my goodness, that was one of the most exhilarating moments of my life. I think I sold a pair of my husband's shoes by the brand Tom's, or it was Vans. And it wasn't like it sold for very much. I think the pair of shoes sold for maybe like $18 or something like that. I probably made like a $14 or $15 profit, but I was hooked. And we quickly sold through the majority of things that we wanted to let go of in our own house. And then I convinced my husband to let me go to local thrift stores to see what I could find there to sell online, because that's what the people on the internet were doing. That's what people on YouTube were doing. They were making videos about the kinds of things that they picked up at Goodwill and Salvation Army and other thrift stores, how much they paid for those items and how much they were selling those items for on Poshmark. I was starting to find videos about eBay as well, and I was just amazed. I was like, do people really bring this kind of stuff, this high quality stuff, these amazing brands to Goodwills and Salvation Armies? Because the people that I was watching online, they were finding amazing things at their local thrift stores. So I begged my husband to let me go. He was just really scared at the prospect of spending money to make money, because up until that point, I was just making pure profit because we were just selling clothes that were already in our home, things that we had already decided we weren't going to wear anymore. And every item that I sold was just pure profit. And now I was asking if I could go to the thrift store and buy things, spend money on clothes to try and sell them. So we went together. I wore him down. We went to my first Salvation Army trip. I had so much fun looking through the racks, trying to find some amazing things. And I quickly learned that where I live, which is like a college town, I was like, okay, so this is not really the type of place where people are donating their Louis Vuitton and their, like Aviator Nation and all that great stuff. Like, people are donating a lot of the same kind of stuff that I would be donating. There's a lot of Gap here. There's a lot of Old Navy. There's a lot of Banana Republic. It's a lot of those kinds of brands. But I was in. Like, I was in it to win it. I learned everything that I could through trial and error, through watching all these YouTube videos. That first full year of reselling, which was 2018, I don't remember how much I earned, but I probably earned north of $10,000. And that was from selling primarily on Poshmark. I think I added Mercari that year to my list of reselling platforms. And Mercari is another reselling platform similar to Poshmark, except that at the time, Poshmark wasn't allowing people to sell anything other than clothing. And on Mercari, you could sell anything. You could sell collectibles, you could sell garden equipment. I mean, you could sell really anything you wanted. It was kind of like eBay's lesser known cousin, if you will. I was too scared to try eBay, even though I knew a lot of people on YouTube who were selling on eBay and making really good money doing that. It just seemed so daunting and so scary to me. So I stayed away from eBay. But that first year, I probably made over $10,000 in profit. And for someone who at that point, let's see, had been teaching for maybe like 5 or 6 years, that was extraordinary. That was life-changing money. My husband, if you don't know, is also a teacher. And at that time, we were living in a house that was a little outside of our comfort zone as far as how much income we were making and how much they wanted from us for the mortgage. The mortgage was a little bit more than what we could handle. And so $10,000 of extra money coming in that first year, that was crazy. And I have a very addictive personality. And not only that, I am super competitive and I'm super into like video games and I don't know, just like games in general, getting better at things. And that was one of the things that I loved so much about reselling was that with teaching, I could pour a lot into it and I would get super into it. And, I love the kids and stuff. But even if you did a lot more, you did not get paid more. They wouldn't increase your salary because you were at school longer than anyone else. Nobody cared. You got paid the same amount as the teacher in the room next to you who barely showed up to work. And so there wasn't really that sort of motivation to put a lot of extra effort and work into my teaching gig. Although don't get me wrong, I pour a lot into my teaching. But the fun thing for me about reselling is not taking pictures, is not listing the item on eBay and Poshmark and all those places. The fun thing about reselling for me was kind of the competitive piece of it. Like, can I beat what I did yesterday? And it was the piece where the more I did, the more I could earn. The piece that I desperately wish was there for teachers. I wish to some degree that you could make more money if you just went in more or you worked harder. And that's just not the way that it is. And so there were so many things about reselling that made it super addictive to me. And it wasn't even just the making money part and like making more money because I was doing more work and investing more time into my reselling business. But it was also like all of the learning I was doing and learning about new brands and learning about new strategies and learning how to scale and just learning what it meant to run a business. Like, it was also new and exciting and fun, even though, again, the actual reselling tasks themselves, not super fun, but just doing something that wasn't teaching, something that I had full control over, something that could make me good money, I was having a blast. And after that first year, I don't really remember. I could go back maybe and like track how much I made year to year to year. But I got to the point by like year 4, year 3 maybe even, where I was turning a $25,000 profit. That's the money that I made after paying for the items that I was finding at thrift stores, after fees that I did have to pay these different reselling platforms. Now, that is pre-taxes, because one thing that I didn't really put a lot of thought into is the fact that I wasn't paying taxes with each sale, and those taxes would come back to bite me in the butt come tax season. So that definitely was something that I had to get used to. And I'm at a point now where I pay quarterly taxes just so I'm not hit with like a $25,000 tax payment that I have to pay sometime in March, and I'm just like, what am I supposed to do? Like, how am I supposed to find $25,000? So we break it up into 4 payments over the course of the year. And when I say $25,000 in taxes, that's because I'm making a lot more now than just the $25,000 a year in profit from reselling, because on top of that, I'm making a lot of money from YouTube and from affiliate marketing and sponsored videos and things like that. So there is money coming in from other places, and that cumulative amount that we've talked about in previous videos is well over $100,000. And that's why taxes can come out to the amount that they come out to, which still hurts. Like, even if you're making over 6 figures and you're being asked to pay over $20,000 in taxes, like, that hurts. But when I tell you that I have consistently been earning over $25,000 in net profit from reselling alone over the past few years, I'm telling you, that is life-changing money. That's the kind of money that allows me to say to my daughter, yeah, you can do club volleyball. That allows me to tell my son, yeah, you can take coding lessons. That allows us to go on vacations and make memories as a family. That allows me to gift my parents with wonderful things and gift my in-laws with wonderful things. Like, I'm able to live the kind of life that I believe my parents immigrated to this country for me to live. They wanted me to just not experience that much hardship. And that's why when they came to the States, they worked menial jobs when they first got here. I think they worked at dry cleaners and stuff like that. I know my in-laws worked at dry cleaners, and they worked at like beauty supply stores and just random things that they were overqualified for. But that's kind of the territory of immigrating to another country, is you're just going to work wherever people will have you. And they do that so that their kids can live successful and stress-free as life can be, but just have more opportunities for success in their lives. And I like to think that the life I'm living now and the ways that I'm able to give back to my parents and to my in-laws, I like to think that that's why they came. Like, that's why they came to the States, is so that I could have these opportunities selling people's garbage online. It's not garbage, but you know what I mean. So that's kind of the overview of what I have gained from reselling. Let's get into the nuts and bolts, though, of what even is reselling, and is this something that could be a viable side hustle for you on the side of your teaching gig? So we talked a little bit too about the things that I really like about reselling. I talked about how it's easy to kind of gamify. It's nice to be rewarded with more money when you put in more work. It's nice to have like something brand new that you get to learn a lot about and get better at. So those are some of the things that I like about it. But in a nutshell, what reselling is you take something. I'm trying to find something on my table. Okay, so this is the scale that I use to weigh my clothing, because you have to know how much things weigh before you ship them out. So what you do as a reseller is you find something in your home. I always recommend that people start with the items in their home. So you find something in your home that you're just not using anymore. So let's say this little scale from Off Nova is the item that you no longer use and you would like to sell it. So what you would do is you would take as many pictures of this item as you need to give an accurate picture to potential buyers of what it is that you're selling and the condition that it's in. So I would take pictures of the front, I would take pictures of the back, I would check, like, there's a little battery section here, and I would open it up, make sure that there's not any of that corroding that can happen with batteries sometimes. And if there were any flaws, like if there was like a big scratch on here or something, I would take a picture of the flaw so that the potential buyers know that that's there, and I would write about that flaw in the description. So first step is you take pictures of the item. Again, I would weigh how much the item weighs, because that's going to become very important once you sell the item and you need to ship it out. And I would put all of that information somewhere. You know, how much it weighs, maybe like if you want to track how much you had into the item, whatever information you want to track, I would just start a spreadsheet or something simple just to keep track of everything that you're selling. Once you take pictures, you have to list the item, which means you go to whichever reselling platform you are selling on. So for me, I started on Poshmark, and then I moved into Mercari, and then I got brave enough to try eBay, and I'm so glad I did because eBay is now where I make the majority of my sales. I'm also now on Depop, and I have tried places like Facebook Marketplace. I sold on a platform called Kitizen that has since shut down. I even started my own website on Shopify. So I sold on a lot of different platforms, and I've done some live selling on platforms like Whatnot. There's also live selling that I've tried on Poshmark. And even on Facebook Marketplace, I tried like local Facebook Marketplace sales. I've never done Craigslist or anything like that, but I have listed things where people can come to my house or we can meet in a parking lot somewhere and, we exchange what I have for their money. But what you do is you pick the platform that you're going to sell on and you list your item to that platform, which means you're posting the pictures that you took of your item. You are creating a listing title that lets people know what it is that you're selling. There's a listing description that you fill out where you're going to talk about the item. You're going to mention any flaws that are on the item. Maybe you have a little backstory as to why you're letting go of it. If maybe you loved this particular jacket that your kid wore, but they just outgrew it. Whatever information you want to share with potential buyers, you have to put a price on that item. And then depending on what platform it is that you're selling on, sometimes they make you put in a lot more information depending on what it is that you're selling. They'll want to know the size of the item, the condition of the item. They'll want to know the color, what country it was made. I mean, there's a lot of information that they could ask you for, but you just fill out all of the information for your listing as completely as possible. You publish it online and you wait for people to find your item and buy it from you. And once they do, you ship the item out to them. You make sure you ship it in a timely manner. This is where it's helpful to know how much your item weighed, because how much you have to pay to ship an item depends on how much that item weighs plus how far away it's going. But once you ship that item out, you're done, unless there's something wrong with your item that you didn't disclose and now the person wants to return it. Or for example, on eBay, I sell primarily clothing, and I don't care if people want to return items because they don't fit or something like that. I accept returns. So every once in a while, you'll get returns on the different platforms too. But for the most part, you sell an item, you see that money show up in your reselling platform account, or it shows up directly in your bank account, depending on how it is that you have things set up. That's it. And you just rinse and repeat. You just list as many items as you want, as many items as you can. The more items you list, the more items you can potentially sell. And the more items you sell, the more money you can make. And this is a scalable business. There are people who resell with a team, people who have like tens of people underneath them who, maybe someone's job is just to ship and someone's job is just to create listings and someone's job is to X, Y, and Z. I have, for my reselling YouTube channel, traveled an hour away to check out a reselling warehouse. It's, a team of resellers who buy liquidation lots, and they will sell through as much of that stuff as they can. And they have probably they have for sure tens of thousands of items in their warehouse. They honestly probably have like 1 million, if not more than 1 million, because they have jewelry, they have clothing, they have exercise equipment, they have just so much stuff. It was honestly kind of overwhelming. And I went to visit them and make a video about them because they reached out and they had such an excess of inventory that they were getting into the business of selling inventory bundles to resellers who just might not have as much access to, the kind of inventory that they did. And when I went there, there were a lot of people. There was an entire team of people dedicated to listing and selling all of that stuff on eBay or into creating these bundles for resellers. So it is something that you can scale. It is something that you can do by yourself if you want. And I have done it both ways. The majority of my reselling journey has been done as a solopreneur. I've done everything myself, from finding all of the inventory, from photographing it, from listing it. But I have gone through seasons where I have attempted to hire out pieces of the work. So for example, I had a student who I found super reliable and who was looking for a job. And I was like, you know what, girl, you can take pictures of clothing for me. And of course, I ran it by her parents first, and I would just bring bins of clothing to her house. I showed her how it was that I needed her to photograph items. We had like a shared folder where she would put all of her pictures of items, and that saved a great deal of time for me. But what happens to students is they graduate and they go away. But that was a cool experiment. And then I tried teaching my sister-in-law and a friend of mine how to list, because to be honest, that is the part that I hate the most. That's kind of the bottleneck for me. And I taught them how to list so that I could get through that process faster. There was a summer where we were dreaming that maybe we could create like a reselling business that would sustain the three of us and replace our existing paychecks. My friend is a school counselor, so, she was in a similar position as I was salary-wise, but my sister-in-law works in the healthcare industry and she works from home, but she made a lot more money than us. And I was like, okay, so we're not at the point yet where with the amount that we're earning with you guys listing that we could replace, all of our salaries. But I taught them how to list, and that was, a team that I had. So I have tried incorporating other people, but generally speaking, I think it just works best when it's me by myself. My husband will help from time to time. My kids will jump in and help from time to time too. But it is something that I have honestly enjoyed growing by myself. At this point, for the last few years, I would say I've remained pretty stagnant. It has not been a goal of mine to scale or do more because I simply don't have the hours to do so. And in fact, I've been kind of pulling back from reselling a little bit and just not doing as much because of the fact that my kids are getting older and they're just doing a lot more. They've become a lot busier with sports and just all the different things that they're involved in. And I want to be involved in it with them, so I don't want to dedicate too much of my time outside of school to my reselling business and miss out on being a part of their lives in a very big way. And so I have actually pulled back a little bit from reselling, but that is the wonderful thing about it is if you want to put a lot of time into it, if you have a lot of spare time outside of teaching from 8 to 3:30, you can put as much time into it as you want and you can make so much money doing it. So in a nutshell, that's all it is. It's you take items that you're no longer using in your own home. Once you run out of items from your own home, you can go out to thrift stores, garage sales, consignment stores, anywhere where you can find things for cheap. You can even find things on eBay for cheap and sell them for more on eBay, So there are so many different places that you can find inventory, but reselling is just finding items for as cheap as possible and selling them for as much as possible so that you can turn a profit. I primarily sell clothing, shoes, accessories, but there are some people who won't touch clothing with a 10-foot pole. They would much rather sell what we call hard goods, which is basically stuff that's not clothing. And a lot of people, what they'll do if they're smart is they will hone in on what they know a lot about. So for example, if you are somebody that is super into cards, Pokemon cards, baseball cards, basketball cards, you just know a lot about them. You have access to a lot of them. People make good money selling cards or coins or stamps or just anything that's kind of collectible. A lot of my friends that I have met on the internet, on YouTube and Instagram and places like that, I have a lot of friends who sell like just such a cool array of things. They'll sell pots and pans, and they'll sell toys, and they'll sell books, and they'll sell some clothes, and they'll sell electronics. Like they just know a little bit about everything. And it's pretty simple once you come across something too, to like look it up on eBay or Poshmark and see how much has this sold for recently, to ensure that what you're picking up is a smart purchase. That's called searching comps, comparable sold listings. So at the beginning, when you're trying to sell stuff, it's painstakingly slow because you don't know anything about it. You don't know what kinds of things sell well. You don't know what the cap should be when it comes to how much you should spend on any given particular item. You just don't know what you don't know. And it takes a while to get to the point where you're proficient at reselling. Even the act of taking pictures or the act of listing items, it's just so slow when you first get started, I still remember the first eBay listing that I did. It took me like 45 minutes because I was just so confused. But it only gets faster and faster the more that you do it. And I think that the best way to resell is to sell what you love. And I do. I love fashion. I love clothes. I love learning about the new brands and the new trends and the new styles. So for me, clothing is my preferred item to sell. I have tried selling things like video games and electronics. It's just like the worst for me because that's when, again, I get into that mode of having to do a lot of research. It slows me down so much and it becomes a lot less fun. So my suggestion, if you're thinking about reselling, is to sell the things that you know a lot about. Earlier I mentioned selling things through something like Facebook Marketplace. Again, if you think about what you love, if you love plants and you're really good at propagating plants, sell plants on Facebook Marketplace. I know that it's so easy to propagate plants, but I don't know how to do it. So I will buy plants from people in my town that I know literally just ripped off this part of a plant from a bigger plant and they threw it in a cup with some soil and watered it. And now they're charging me $10, $20 for that. And they have like 10 other propagations of this one plant. Like I know that I could just do that myself, but I'm never going to do it. And this person's going to do it. So I'm going to pay them the $10 for it and buy a few other plants from this person as well. If you have expertise in something like that, make money off of it. List those items online. I also found who is going to become my bike guy on Facebook Marketplace. I was looking for a bike for my daughter. I found a great bike for sale on Facebook Marketplace. We agreed to meet up in the parking lot of a local ice cream store. And as we're, talking about the bike, we're just kind of talking a little bit here and there about just life and things. And I came to learn that he's like a serious cyclist. Like I think he said what is the word? Biked? He went from coast to coast last year, I think it was. So like this man is a serious cyclist. He knows his stuff. And I learned that he would basically flip bikes on Facebook Marketplace. He would find bikes for cheap. He'd fix them up because he had the know-how. He had a passion for bikes. And then he would sell them for profit on Facebook Marketplace. So if you're dealing with things that are really big like bikes or things that are really delicate like plants, although I don't know if you know this, but you can ship plants too. I have a friend, an Instagram friend, who makes a killing selling really rare and amazing plants, and she'll ship them to people. I have bought a plant from her before, and she's shipped it to me. But you can even sell locally if you're too nervous about the shipping aspect, or if the things that you're passionate about are just too big to ship. You can also sell at flea markets. You can open a booth at an antique mall. There are so many different ways to resell. But if you enjoy the hunt of looking for a great deal, if you enjoy learning and always being on the cusp of what things are selling well right now, then reselling could be for you. My husband and I always look at each other and ask ourselves, did you think this is what we'd be doing like 10 years ago? Like, was this on your bingo card? Never. Like, I didn't even know this was a thing pre-2017. I had never heard of it, didn't know that people made money doing it. And here I am now making over $25,000 a year doing it. And I have a YouTube channel about it, which is crazy. And that's how much I have learned about reselling. That's how much I have benefited from it and grown from it, and how much it has changed my life. So again, one of the things that I love about reselling is I think you can devote as little or as much time to it as you want. That by itself is pretty huge. You make your own hours. And to be honest with you, I would say in any given week, when I'm putting a lot into it, I'm probably devoting at least 7 to 10 hours a week, I would say. Like, I try to do a little bit more on the weekends. And if you're counting the amount of time that I spend on shopping for the items, and that's probably my favorite part, is like going to my local consignment stores, going to local thrift stores, finding the items that I want to sell. If you include that part, which I sometimes don't count because I'm having so much fun, but yeah, I probably spend about 7 to 10 hours a week on my reselling business. And just with selling very bread and butter brands, I am still selling a lot of like Banana Republic. I'm selling a lot of J. Crew. Sometimes I can find better brands, but most of my pieces are selling in that like $20 to $30 range. And even with that, with 7 to 10 hours a week, I'm able to earn over $25,000 in profits a year. If you have access to better items, like if you're selling primarily electronics, things that are selling for like over $100, if you are primarily selling, I don't know, like luxury watches because that's your jam, you're going to make a lot more per year, even if you're spending just the same amount of time on reselling every week that I am, because of the fact that you're just selling more expensive pieces. On the flip side, you could decide to put a lot less time into it and maybe just make an extra $5,000 to $10,000 a year. That's still pretty amazing. So how do you get into reselling? Selfishly, of course, I'm going to tell you to go online, go on YouTube, and just watch a lot of free content about reselling. You can start, if you want, with my reselling YouTube channel. It is Becky Park Co. If you were to just search Becky Park Co. on YouTube, you will find my channel. It will be the channel of someone with this exact face. And I have, I don't know, hundreds of videos about how to sell online. And we're going to talk about YouTube, in a coming podcast episode, because that is another one of my side hustles. One of the best things about being a YouTuber as a teacher is when I have videos where I teach people how to do things, which is the majority of my videos, people are always like, I can tell you're a teacher. You're so good at explaining things. You're so good at sequencing things. Like, it's just what we do on a daily basis. And therefore it comes out very naturally in the way that I explain things and break things down in my YouTube videos. And so if you want to learn from teacher to teacher how to resell, you can go check out that YouTube channel. Again, Becky Park Co. There are blogs. There are lots of different resources. There are a ton of people selling courses on how to resell. I personally learned everything by myself using free information on YouTube. And I think that's just the place to go. And if you're like, I cannot watch more of you and look at your face anymore, that's totally fine. There are so many amazing YouTubers who resell and share their experiences so generously. And I just think it's so hard not to figure it out if you just watch some of their content. It has changed my life. It's as simple as that. Reselling has changed my life. And weirdly enough, even though it's like another thing that I'm doing that's taking up my time outside of teaching, it is something that has helped me enjoy teaching even more, if that makes sense. Because I don't know, like, I'm not teaching just for the paycheck anymore. I don't really need that paycheck because I have all this other stuff that's making me more money than the money that I make from teaching. And that's how I know that I'm really teaching, because I love it. And there's something about that that feels so, the right word is not luxurious, but that's the only thing I can land on. It's a luxury. That's what it is. It's a luxury that I get to teach and not think about the money piece of it and not be stressed out about how little I get paid. I don't even look at my bank account, to be quite frank with you. My husband does all of our finances. I don't even know how much I make from teaching. I just know that I make a lot more from reselling and YouTube and all that stuff. But I continue to go back to the classroom every August because I've learned through making money through other means that I really love teaching, that I wouldn't be able to imagine a life without teaching at this moment in time. So I'll leave you with this when it comes to reselling, and if it's something that you should try. When I first started reselling, I was pretty shy about it because it's weird. You're like getting stuff at Goodwill and you're selling it online to complete strangers. Like, it's kind of weird, and a lot of people just don't get it. And it's not something that I bring into every conversation. Like, I honestly try to steer the conversation away from the fact that that's something that I do as a side hustle, because a lot of people just don't get it. But with my closest friends, they all know that I do it. And, word kind of travels, like especially at my church. One of my friends would maybe tell someone else at our church that that's something that I do, and people would ask me questions. And at one point, I realized that there were like 4 or 5 people in my life who had started reselling because of the fact that I was reselling. Even my best friend way out in New York, she, was just trying to support me when it came to my YouTube channel, and she would watch some of my YouTube videos, and she was like, I'm actually listing stuff on Poshmark, and I'm selling stuff on Facebook Marketplace. And this woman, her husband is a lawyer. Like, they don't need this kind of side income, but she just found it really fun. She really enjoyed, earning a little bit of money on the items that they were no longer using in her home, and she was reselling, and it was really cool. My sister-in-law tried it out for a bit. She realized it was not for her, which is fine. One of the pastor's wives at my church started reselling, still does it. My friend, again, who works as a guidance counselor at a different high school in our town, she and her husband resell, still do it, make some great side income. I realized that there were a lot of people in my life who started reselling because of me, because, I was doing it and I was not dead. Like, I was able to sustain both that and my full-time job. And it's not like a pyramid scheme or anything like that. Like, you don't have to belong to any group. You don't have to show up to any meetings. You just run it the way you want to run it. And that is one of the things that I love so much about it. And one of the things that I think a lot of people who resell love about reselling. It's your reselling business. You get to build it up to be whatever it is that you want it to be. You make the rules. You can sell whatever you want. You don't have to sell things that other people sell. You don't have to do things the way that other people do them. There's no right or wrong way, really. There is just the way that works for you. I say start with the things in your home that you don't wear anymore, that you don't use anymore. Look through your garage. Try it out. See if it's something that sticks. See if it's something that you find any joy in, and if so, maybe this could become your side hustle too. If you feel like you learned anything, if you're inspired to maybe try reselling yourself, I would so appreciate it if you wouldn't mind leaving this podcast episode a rating, a 5-star rating, if you will. If you want to leave less than a 5-star rating, maybe just don't leave a rating. Like, you can email me and tell me what qualms you have with the podcast. But if you're wanting to leave a 5-star rating, please do so. And if you're watching on YouTube, please go ahead and hit that like button. That helps out the video and this channel so very much. And if you have a friend that you think would benefit from learning about reselling, go ahead and share this episode with them as well. I appreciate you guys spending your time with me. I know that you could be doing a lot of other things, but hopefully you enjoyed a nice cup of coffee while listening to me talk about reselling. But as always, from me to you, thank you for being a teacher. Thank you for changing the lives of your students. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.